And we are live. Awesome. And we are live. Hello. Good morning, good evening. How are you, Leon?
Chilling.
Nice. Awesome. I think we should give like a minute or two for people to join in. Um, and then maybe we can kickstart with the demo.
All right. Any of my EST folks out here still having their first cup of coffee? Get that coffee.
Awesome.
How come I don't have a sweet name tag? I mean, I don't have a job title the same way you do.
I think you can just edit your name, and I think you should be good to go. How do you do that? Interesting. Yeah, I mean, you can click on the three dots, edit your name, and you can add your headline as well.
Oh, 3 dots. Nice.
Okay, awesome. I think we should get started. Oh, there you go. You have a headline now. Awesome. I'll quickly kickstart then. Hello. Welcome to yet another webinar with Zencoder team. I have Leon with me today, and we are actually going to do something super crazy today, and we'll be walking through a super enterprisey feature, which is multi-repo search. So before I hand it over to Leon to talk more about what multi-repo does, just a quick glimpses of what we shipped last month. So in July, we had two amazing and exciting features. One of them was multi-search, and the other one was Zen Rules. So Zen Rules was essentially a feature wherein it provides you a mechanism for encoding architectural decisions, standard coding standards directly into your AI context. So you don't have to keep on putting out instructions again and again. So it learns from what your Zen rules have defined. So moving next, we have something called multi-repo search, which we are going to talk more about today. So multi-repo search, again, it's an enterprisey thing. If you're an enterprise, you know how difficult it is to switch between different sort of repositories, different sort of context, and this particular feature comes into the action and helps you solve that. So to walk you through and to talk more about what multi-repo search does, so Leon, over to you.
Well, hello everybody. Here we go. Okay. All right. So first off, I'm Leon. I'm a developer advocate here at Zencoder. I would love to know who we have in the chat in the webinar today. So if any or all of you just want to pop a quick note in the chat, tell me a little bit about yourself, that'd be great, so I know who I'm talking to. But basically, what I'm here to talk about today is multi-repo search. Right now, let's see. How do I control my screen here? Yeah. Okay. I want to have you right in front of me. So, multi-repo search. Whether you're coming here as part of a team or a solo developer, solo founder, entrepreneur, right? Multi-repo search is for everybody, be it the biggest team or the solo founder. Why? Right? I've been a solo founder. I've been part of a really big software engineering team. And in both cases, I end up having a multi-repo environment at any level of success, right? So even the demo that I'm going to show you today, right, it's actually a real personal project that I worked on that grew to the point where there was a separate repo for the API, a separate repo for the mobile client, and a separate repo for the dashboard. Now, that's a pretty small example, but then when you get into larger enterprise environments, larger, scopes of success, suddenly you have repos related to DevOps and repos related to your agents, right? And your LLM tooling, all sorts of repos related to quality assurance, right? So there's a ton of stuff that just comes with success, right? So heavy is the head that wears the crown, and this tool is designed to make it a little bit lighter. So why multi-repo search, right? Especially when you have agents that can already document everything pretty well, right? You can run an agent on any repo and ask it to document. You can run Zencoder on any repo you have open in the IDE, and ask it to document your code, and it'll do a fabulous job, right? At the end of the day, in isolation in that silo, you're still only getting documentation on the scope of that code base without tracking those interdependencies, right? And in a multi-repo environment, those interdependencies are most often your weakest points, right? Because they're the least documented and you have the least amount of awareness, right? As an engineer working on one project versus the other project, one team versus the other team, right? You only have so many repos in your scope of work. So this helps in a few ways. You know what? It might actually be easier to start with the demo so that you can get a taste of what I'm talking about. And it's really straightforward. You don't need to do anything special. This is available on all core and advanced plans. Martin Thompson, hey, I see you. Human in the Loop AI fan from Spain. What is up? Good to see you. See a couple other folks in the chat. Nice. Okay. I'm gonna get started with the demo. Oh, nice, Shania. Thank you. Okay, so it's real simple, right? If you have a Zencoder account, then you have your Zencoder dashboard, your Zencoder admin panel, right? So the first thing you're going to do is set up a connection with your GitHub. Now, I've already set one up here, right? But it's pretty straightforward. For you GitHub newbies, you're going to want a personal access token, right? But that's pretty simple to arrange. So right now, we have GitHub and Bitbucket support. GitLab is coming real soon. You're going to name your connection, auth type locked in, and personal access token, right? And that personal access token, you can just go into your GitHub settings, developer settings, and then create a new personal access token scoped to whatever level of permissions you want. But it does need to have at least lead permissions on your repos in order to work for obvious reasons. So once you have that configured, I'm not going to configure a new one right now, but once you have a connection configured, you're going to go over your repositories and you're going to set up whichever repositories you want to connect, right? So I have already added the repositories that in my personal scope, I want Zencoder to be aware of when I work, right? So I have Rusty TS, which is a TypeScript API service. I have Rusty RN, which is a React Native mobile client. And then I have Rusty Dashboard, which is the sort of like the web admin dashboard, similar to what you're looking at right here, except for my own little platform. So super simple to add one, right? You just go in here, click add, select which essentially personal access token you want to use for that, right? That's going to be my primary. And here you're going to pop in the organization and repo name. That's super easy to get. You can grab that straight from the URL of your Git repo, and then configure what level of visibility you want this to have, right? So this could be personal, this could be org-wide. And that actually speaks to another really cool feature that we have called custom agents, which you can also scope to be either personal or org-wide. But I'll save that for the questions or for another webinar. So coming here into repositories, okay, I've got my personal repos indexed here. What you're going to see here, I'm going to start a new chat. So here I have, let's say I'm working on the backend right now. I'm working on the API, and I want to know, for starters, which other, let's say, repos consume this API, right? And again, there's no special, config that you need to do once you've set that up. Nothing particular in the IDE, because it will pull directly from these repos that you've already indexed, right? So how does this work, right? Basically, once you add these repos to the repository, or once you add these repos to your dashboard for indexing, Zencoder is going to process them. It's going to create its own mapping of the logic between. It's not going to store your code base on any external server, right? It's just used to process that understanding of it. And then that mathematical representation is stored for reference here, right? So now we're doing our organization repo search. And our multi-repo search. Okay, so first we're grabbing all those repos that we've got, and then we're going and getting real specific. And you can see here Zencoder is doing its usual very thorough search. So you're going to see a few of these calls, right? Because what's really happening behind the scenes here is it's searching across a bunch of different parameters, because this API can be consumed across a pretty huge array of different endpoints, versioning too. So there's a bunch of different ways to search for this, but let's see what we have here. Okay, so here we have it, right? API consumers. We've got correctly my native mobile app, and here it tells me a little bit about that app too. Not only that it's consuming this API, but specifically what endpoints, right? Why is this valuable, right? Because now I know if there's a blind spot, if there's a gap between the API consumption on my web dashboard versus my mobile client, for example, right? So we keep digging. Got the media upload already configured. Great. Perfect. Okay. And so this is also really valuable information, right? So it's looking at my dashboard, and it's seeing that the dashboard actually uses a completely different implementation, which is accurate. Because what's going on here is that I'm making calls from the dashboard directly to Supabase, circumventing a lot of the API. That can mean two things, right? Either that the dashboard is less further along in the development process, or that it's taking a completely different approach. But already we've discovered something that we wouldn't have known intuitively if we didn't have that multi-repo context, right? I'm going to check the comments real quick to see if, nice. Okay, cool. So now that we have a lay of the land here, we can get a little fancy. So I'm a visual learner. I don't know about you, but how about an ACII diagram to represent these interdependencies? All right, let's see what we got. Beauty. Oh, beauty. Okay. Look at that. Okay, now if you DevOps folks aren't losing it right now, then you must be really good at your jobs, because for me, this accelerates my onboarding onto a new team, new project, new company immeasurably, right? Like I said, I'm a visual learner, but a lot of the times you will not find these diagrams. And honestly, a lot of the time when you are just, let's say you're a solo founder coding 24/7, right? You might lose track of how everything connects, especially as you offload more and more work, as you delegate a lot of the low-level details to your agents, be it Zencoder or whatever solution you use. Here, regardless of the scope, and again, I want to reiterate that this is just 3 repos. I've worked in companies with hundreds of repos, and there is no limit to the repos that you can index, right? So the more repos you have, obviously the more sophisticated the architecture, or possibly even overly complex, right? But either way, it's crucial to identify those interdependencies as you spread out those surfaces. So here we have, okay, the method that we're connecting, right? Where stuff is deployed. Like we have both the interdependencies and the high-level architecture overview, so we understand how everything fits together. Yeah. Okay, nice. So I have just learned a ton, not only about this core API repo, but I have learned a ton from using this for 5 minutes about how this repo is situated in our overall platform architecture and the platform architecture as a whole, including not just the code bases, but how they deploy, where they live, right? So if you are onboarding to a new company or onboarding onto a new project in a multi-repo environment, then this is going to make your life so much easier, not only as you start, but as you continue work, to make sure that you are changing things in a way that doesn't break everything else that relies on it or that it relies on, right? JD Shill, you are welcome. unless somebody else was answering your question, in which case, never mind. Key insights from the diagram. Okay, yeah. I don't know about you, I get a big kick out of this visual representation, but if you wanted to take this to some sort of, like, for example, if we wanted to generate a mermaid diagram instead, right? So folks, mermaid is essentially a library that lets you basically use configuration files like the one that you're seeing here being generated right now to create really nice, visually appealing interactive diagrams that you can host on the web. If this is your bag, then go for it. You can actually hook up an AWS charts MCP as well, or AWS diagrams, right? To get your DevOps diagrams, those official, right, DevOps diagrams, nice and neat, just from that MCP connection, something that typically takes weeks of work at scale, right? This can inform your work and coordinate the actual implementation in a matter of minutes. And I know that we've all heard that you can do this in minutes or hours instead of days and weeks when we talk about AI and LLMs and coding agents. But here we're not just talking about code gen, right? We are talking about filling in these crucial gaps that exist in any organization, because GitHub out of the box is not designed for that cross-repo information, right? It's designed to house repos as distinct units. So this is that missing layer, and this is what's going to reduce that information gap from weeks to hours or minutes, as you can see right here. I'm going to take a quick pause here for any questions. Let's take a look at the chat.
Yes, I think there are a bunch of questions. I'll just pull the questions on the screen. There you go. We have one question from Variance Infotech, and they're asking how is it different from Replit?
Okay, how is Zencoder different from Replit? Because in quite a few ways. I'll briefly touch on that now. And if you want all the ways, then absolutely hit me up in the Slack community. But for one, sheer quality of output, right? So with the Zencoder platform, we add a layer on top, right, that iterates over the output from the LMs to make sure that you are getting the context you need. So you saw here, for example, right, that we are doing a lot of search here, right? I've got the Zencoder agent running here, and this is a level of context awareness that you typically will not find in other environments. Now, if you put this head to head with, for example, whatever models you're using in Replit, right, or let's say Cursor or Copilot, you will see that even with the same code base indexed and running the same top of the line base models, the difference in output is pretty stark from the get-go. So sheer quality of output for one. Two, since you open the door, we're right here, right? When you have a question, you will be talking to us, real people, not just about troubleshooting, but about strategizing, about best practices, about how to get where you want to go. C, we honestly have a ton of features in the plugin and the web app that I will be hosting many a webinar on in the near future. So I will dive into how this is different. You know what? I might do a whole webinar about how this is different from Replit. But if you are really curious, then give us a shot, reach out to me, and I will be more than happy to let you know more.
Awesome. Perfect. I think we have another follow-up question. This is from Subrat. So Subrat is asking, can we also use this inside Rackflow code base also?
Great question. Let's see. I don't know. Off the top of my head, I don't know. But I can tell you this: you can index, or not, but you can index any open source public GitHub repo, right? So I don't see any reason why not. I haven't tried it, but you know what? Here's actually a good example, right? So in addition to the repos that are part of this Rusty project, so by the way, Rusty is it's basically like an education platform that I was just tinkering around with. But this Ignite repo, this is actually a really robust boilerplate open source React Native repo, right? And I want to use it for reference when I want my agent to use it for reference when it's helping me build this React Native mobile client, right? And so now, because I can just index it into my multi-repo search environment, luckily this repo actually does have pretty robust documentation, but if you index the repo itself, then you do not have to rely on that documentation or in whatever state it may be in order to actually extract the meaningful code inside of that code base and then reference it when you're building your own project. So even if this project had zero documentation, I can now use all of the knowledge contained therein to build something really special and something that aligns really well with this boilerplate code, this best practice code. Sorry, I know that was a long-winded way to get to your question of does Ragflow work, right? Let me know. I don't see any reason why I shouldn't. Let me know.
Awesome. I think there are no more questions. It's more of a feedback thing, but there's one more question.
Yeah.
Is this available now? So I'm assuming this is more to do with in what plans do we have this multi-repo search available?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. In fact, I'm using this. This is my external account, right? This is just my personal Zencoder account. This isn't internal. So you can, if you have a core or advanced plan, you can use this right now, and you can start indexing your heart out. What kind of? I would love to know how many repos y'all are working with. But just because I'm curious. I mean, me, for example, in my personal GitHub, I have 300 repos, right? Now, obviously, they're not all part of the same project, but there is a lot in there that will tell and inform an agent about how I prefer to structure things, how I like to code, how I like to document, right? So you really cut out the middleman of a lot of this extra config that you can just source directly from your GitHub repos. And that includes, I don't know how many of you use, for example, Jira or Notion as a knowledge, or sorry, not Jira, but Confluence, right? Now, I came from an organization that used Confluence extensively, Confluence and Guru, actually. But with Confluence, there were thousands of pages of documentation at that point, right? Trying to cover the high-level architecture overview of specific systems, right? And that is a full-time job for a whole team in and of itself, because architecture is constantly updating. There were so many docs that were out of date, or that you don't know whether they're out of date or not, because you have two sources of truth, right? When you decouple that knowledge from the source code. And this removes that additional layer of, I guess, disconnect. Just gets right to the heart of it.
Awesome.
Yes, it's available now. So please try it. Please reach out to us on community Slack at support.zencoder if you have any questions. I will be the one that is answering your questions. So code your hearts out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leon, for answering that. I see we have a bunch of more questions. So there's another question from the same person who just asked this. So, but what if I just create a folder structure and then contain subfolders of each project, and then ask the agent with set of questions?
You can absolutely do that. And honestly, without multi-repo search, that's a perfectly reasonable way to have all of that context under one roof. The thing is, when you start talking about dozens or hundreds of repos, then that starts to be a real pain to A, organize in the first place, and B, keep current, right? You could have a script that git pulls every repo every day, right? You could git pull everything manually. But at the end of the day, you just don't need to. And you also need to keep track of, did a new repo come out, right? Are we deprecating a repo? Like there's a lot there that you can jerry rig to work in a completely local environment. With this, you do not need to. And there's a lot of advantages to that.
Correct. I don't see any more questions. But yeah, if you have more questions, feel free to drop them here. Or else, as just Leon said, feel free to drop them on our Slack, Discord, or even at support. Leon, me, Vipur, anybody from the team can pick that up. Awesome. I think if no more questions, any final note, Leon, before we close out for the day?
I mean, just that when I first saw this, I was pretty excited. This is the kind of thing that makes my life as an engineer a lot easier. And I'm really not trying to gas it up. It's just this is one of those things that really brings a lot of stuff that's in the shadows out into the light. And it makes me better as an engineer when I understand the big picture. So if anything, I would just say start thinking big picture, and please try Zencoder's Multi-Repo Search to help you get there.
Awesome. I think that brings us to the end. Once again, thank you so much, Leon, for joining in. This was super wonderful. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining in today. I think you got a glimpse of how multi-search repo works. Feel free to give it a shot. And if you still have any questions, feel free to reach us out. We'll be more than happy to assist. So having said that, once again, we'll see you again in the next one. Bye-bye and cheers.
Bye, everybody.